14b, second line from the bottom. Itmar, we said, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, halacha shelo b'regel lo shma halacha. So one of the parts of the avodah of a korban is you take the blood from the shechita area, or where the animal is shechted, and you bring it to the mizbeach. So that bringing it has to be done by foot with walk. You walk it over. If you don't do it that way, then that doesn't qualify. So Gemara says, "Efshar takuna or lo efshar takuna." All right. So let's say you did it. Let's say you toss the bowl of blood over to your fellow Kohen rather than walk it over. So can you fix it? Can you take it back and do it again the right way? Tashma, let's have a proof. Kibo hakosher v'nosan l'apasul. Let's say you have a good Kohen, kosher Kohen, that's carrying the blood, and he gave it to a non-kosher person, maybe a non-Kohen or someone. Okay, let's say it's a non-Kohen. Yahzir l'kosher. So what you do is you give it back to the first guy who's valid, and let him take it. Right? Unahiname diyachzor hakosher v'yikablanu. Now we could understand that means that the kosher person um, has to continue the holacha. Yeah, so I'm not sure what the Gemara is getting at here, but yeah, even if you say that he has to take it back, of course it means what it means. Now, Isal Kadata Takuna, if you say that you can't fix it, ipasloa. So, once the second guy has taken it and started carrying it, then that part of the halacha is not valid and can't be fixed. So Gemara says, "Misaras the kai zargavai." What you think that the when he handed it to the non-Kohen, he was closer to that guy was closer to the mizbeach, so it was part of the halacha. No, lo the kai zar barai. The non-Kohen was standing further away from the mizbeach. Okay, so if then the kosher guy goes and takes it back, he's not the non-Kohen hasn't actually done any halacha. He's taken it backwards, which is not, part of the. You can consider that not part of the avoda. And when the kosher guy takes it back, he just continues from more or less from where he left off. Okay, so there's no proof there. So we don't have an answer to whether you can fix it or not. Itmar, Amar lo Rabbi Yochanan, halacha
No,
shel roel
when Rashi said ifsala bo'olechet kachia rishona, referring to the first person. Is that what Rashi means?
Yeah, the kosher person, right?
That he's walking it back to the kosher person. Is that so? I'm looking at short Rashi there. Ifsala bo'olechet kachia rishona.
Where is it?
Because the way you're explaining it, can give it back to the kosher person, right?
Yeah, kasher rishona. So this was part of the question. So ipasla meant that this was the question was, then once the second guy has taken it, it's possible it can't be fixed. And the Gemara answered, no, it can be if if under the care of the czar of the non-Kohen, it didn't make any progress towards the mizbeach.
So
Okay.
so what's the Rashi about bo'olechet kachia rishona? What's
In the walking of the kosher of the 1 second. Oh yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. 1 second.
I'm just not.
I
I don't
yeah,
quite
I see your
understand it.
question. I see your question. What is Rashi getting at? You dealt with. Um, 1 second. Hmm. Um, לא סיבה שעמה אפשר תחת. Okay, I think so. Look at the previous Rashi. I think it's meant as follows. In the Hiname, Klomar, the Iname Mefarshosla, if you want to explain it, the Bekasha Rishon Sheyolich Litzadam Mizbeach Kamar, that if you want to explain it, that the first it's the first guy takes it back and brings it to the Mizbeach. V'kol shekain deshamas deholachas kasher kama dehavai shelo beregel ksherahi and certainly if if the if the first guy did some uh, and so the czar okay um if you're understanding this, that the first guy goes and takes it back and takes it to the Mizbeach, and then certainly that implies that if the first guy, if there was no second guy, but the first guy did it with that, not Berego, then it's kasher. Either way, you can see that it's that there's a way to fix it, right? That even though the part of the halacha was invalid, you can go do it again. And then ipasla b'hoskarsha rishona. If the ipasla means in the case if you were interpreting it as kol shekain, that if the kosher guy did it with improper halacha, in other words, not on foot. That's what Rashi's getting at. So it's puzzle. Like either way would be possible. If you think it can't be fixed, then you possible. Then either way, it's possible. So why do you say yachzir lakasher?
So when he
So
says
yach
ipasla bo'olechet kasher rishona, is that even in the walking?
mm, no, in walking not by foot, invalid halacha. Right, that's what we're talking about. Is halacha if it's done
Now,
not by walking.
not by walking, right?
Right,
It passes it, throws
right,
it,
but it's
whatever he
still
does.
yeah. The name of the avodah is halacha, like bringing it, even if it's not by foot. Okay, yeah, thank you for
So,
pointing that
so
out.
therefore, it's ipasla b'holechet kasher rishona. It puzzles the first bringing by foot, even though.
Yeah, so then why would the Mishnah say that Yatzir Lakasha, that you can do it, you can redo it in the kosher way? And so in other words, there's no proof from here because like the only way you can understand this is if the if you're if you didn't move it forward in the non-kosher way. Okay, if that's the case, then I understand why you can kind of you can resume, you can pick up where you left off. Okay, because you went in an improper way, you went backwards, then yachzer lakosher. Then I can understand why you would say, okay, so let the kosher guy take it, or let the guy do it in the kosher way from this point on. And you haven't lost anything because the improper way was going backwards, going away from the mizbech.
Oh, so he didn't go forward.
Right,
He
right,
just
right.
didn't play. He moved it with his hands, or
Yeah,
but he did, but
backwards.
he didn't. But backwards, not forwards.
Backwards, exactly. Okay. Itmar, Amar Lam Rabbi Yochanan, halacha shel regel psula. Halacha not by foot is not kosher. Alma lo shel takuna. So that he just says possible. He says it's like if it were possible to fix it, he should have said so. Esvei Rav Nachman Lilos or Rav Nachman Asula Nishbach min achli al ritzvah. What about a case where the blood got spilled on the floor, vasafo, and then you managed to gather it up, kosher? Then you can continue. It's okay. So doesn't like so if it spilled, didn't it go towards at least a little bit towards the mizbeach, not by foot, but like on the floor? So Gemara says, "Hachamayaskinon kishiyatsa lachutz." If the blood spilled backwards, right? Like in the previous case, right? It didn't go towards the mizbeach, went away from the mizbeach.
So he picks up
Um,
all the blood that spilled. Is
yeah,
is
exactly how
that
that
really
works, I don't know.
possible?
I don't know how that works
I mean,
exactly.
if the blood,
I
okay,
know,
you do the
right?
best you can, but if it's on cement floor, then it seeps into the cracks, and how are you going to scoop it all up? And
Right. Okay. So maybe the idea is, I mean, if what if you don't take all the blood to the mizbeach, but you take enough? I don't know if there's a measure or what, but you take enough to sprinkle on the mizbeach. Maybe that's what's going on here. I'm not
I mean, I'm
certain.
getting this a picture in my mind of, you know, no Atzleinu, Rahman al I'm getting the picture of the the Anshe Zaka, who enter all the terrorist sites and so forth, pick up the blood, all the pieces.
Uh,
They want to make sure they're buried and so forth. And they wash the walls and scrape it. They make sure do the best they can. I'm making that picture in
yeah.
my mind. I don't know if this is what they do in the Beit HaMikdash here.
Well, maybe it's enough to gather up enough blood that you can continue the avodah.
Whatever that shear is.
Yeah, like you haven't, remember, you haven't taken all the animal's blood, right? You take enough. You take the bowl full. I don't know if it's a reese, or I don't know I don't remember what the measure is. But you don't have all, to begin with, you don't have all the animal's blood anyway. So if some spills and you can't pick it up, as long as you have enough, maybe. That seems to make sense.
No, that I understand. If he, but he says he nishbach min hakli ala ritzba asaf asafo. He's collecting it, picking it up. I mean, if
Right?
he's that's the point I'm focused on. How you picking it? Okay, they
How do
didn't
you
take
pick
all
up
the
blood?
animal
Yeah.
blood. You get the shear from the animal. You go back to the animal and take more blood. That's easier to understand. But when it says asafo, how is he collecting all these drops of blood that are on
Yeah.
the walls and the floor?
Yeah. Okay. It's a good question. I don't know. We can just say it's theoretical then, if you like.
Well, I'm thinking of Zaka in their case, it's not theoretical. They're going to
Yeah.
all extremes.
Unfortunately,
I mean,
we're all too familiar. Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, so Ula says, okay, so what are we talking about? So when does Rabbi Yochanan say it's sorry, when does the Mishnah say that if it's spilled, that you could still pick it up? If it flowed away from the Mizbeach, so the same thing, it went backwards, so you can pick up where you left off. So Gemara says, Brian Nafik, is that how it works? Like blood, like it's a liquid, right? It goes in all, when you spill it, it goes in all directions. It's not like, how is it possible that it's not going to proceed towards the Mizbeach? Well, it's just Makom Midron, it's on a slope. Okay. So it slopes away from the Mizbeach, so then it's all going to flow away from the Mizbeach. By same Abaguma, or you could say it spilled into a hole in the floor. Okay, so here you could actually understand now maybe how you could retrieve it if there's like an indentation or a hole in the floor, then
As long as it doesn't go
towards the Mizbeach. Yeah.
out. Well, no, as long as it doesn't go deep into the floor and the
All
cracks,
right.
and you
Yeah.
can't get it 6 feet
Yeah.
away or whatever.
Right. V'vaisem b'smicha, or you could say we're talking about blood that's already thickened, and it doesn't spread. Okay. The ichpal tana lashmina kohani. Um, uh, so Gemara's asking, like, is the mission like really talking about such unusual cases? Like it says, if it spills, it's probably talking about the general case, in the general case, some of the blood would go towards the mizbeach. V'od adatani beidach pirkin. Um, what about later in our parak where we have Mishnah nishbach al haritzba v'asafo pasul if it spills on the floor before it goes into a clay shari. So this is directly from the shechita, and you gather it uh, puzzle. So and then it's puzzle. So liflog b'didei. So that Mishnah should specify. But medvarim amurim kishayos. That's only if it uh, if the blood goes away from the uh, it's kosher if it goes away from the mizbeach. It's impossible if it goes towards the mizbeach. It's possible. So the Mishnah didn't say anything like that. So it seems like spilling it doesn't really matter which way it goes. So tiyufta, yeah. So you're right. Ula's deduction from the words of Yochanan are incorrect, um, and uh, and maybe it can be fixed, right? Maybe Rabbi Yochanan implies that it can indeed be redone. Itmar. Next
Well, in
statement.
which case? Because we said it here. He says of a niknas nifnim pasul. So
No,
that,
Rabbi
that
Yochanan said just a simple statement, halacha shelo b'regel psula, and he didn't qualify it. So Ula wanted to say because he didn't qualify it, must be you can't fix it,
right.
right? Um, um, and so what we're saying is no, because we have another Mishnah that says vasafo kosher that you can gather it up and it's kosher. That shows, and we are now understanding that that means even if the blood flowed toward the mizbeach, so that shows that you can fix it.
It says pasul though.
Yeah, halacha shelo b'regel pasul. Can you fix it? And
But if it's pasul, it would mean it's cannot fix it, right?
well, that's what Ula wanted to say, but we're saying no. We've shown that Rabbi Yochanan could mean that it's possible unless you fix it.
Oh, oh, oh. So that's
Yeah,
a tiyuv to the ula.
right.
Oh, it'd be pasul if it in those cases where but if you didn't do anything, it would be pasul. So that implies it can be fixed according to Rabbi Yochanan.
Yes, or it could be that Rabbi Yochanan. You could explain Rabbi Yochanan either way. I would say, like you can't from his statement, you can't tell whether he meant it can be fixed or it can't be fixed. In general, he was talking about a normal case of halacha shelo b'regel, right? You can imagine a simple case, right? But can you fix it? That we he didn't specify.
It would no, what I recall is when we say tiyufta, that seems it's a proof against someone. But if we're not sure that how Rabbi Yochanan, if Reuven says you
Yeah,
can't,
yeah. So
maybe you
it's a
can, maybe
tiyufta of
you can.
ula.
That seems like a strong word to use here.
Well, but Ula wanted to say this is what this is what we can derive from Yochanan, and we're saying no, Ula, we you can't show that. You can't prove that.
Uh-huh.
Itmar halacha shelo b'regel machlokas Rabbi Shimon Rabbanan. The halacha not by foot is the that's what Rav Shimon ben Azai in our Mishnah and the other and the Rabbanan are arguing about whether it can be whether that's possible. Halacha Rab Siduch Lo Pli Psula. Okay, so everybody, the Gemara conjectures that everybody agrees that if it's like if you take it several steps, um, not beregel. I shouldn't use the word steps, but if you take it a certain, a significant distance, not beregel, everybody would agree that it's possible. Keep pligi b'halachas utrasi. What we're talking about is what the machlokas in the Mishnah is only a very short distance. So in other words, you could just like pass it over, right? It's not there aren't any steps required to get from A to B, right? You're already next to the mizbeach, and then rather than take the last step, you stretch out your arm. Okay,
So,
so
so
that's what they're arguing about. So Machlo Marava in the West, they laughed at this conjecture because Elachatosov, the Psula Ba B'machshava. Take the case of a bird chatos, right? Where if you do it with the wrong intention, right? Rabbi Shimon, how can that happen according to Rabbi Shimon? So we're kind of seem to be assuming that you do the malika of the bird chatos right next to the mizbeach. If the invalid intention was before the blood came out of the neck, lo klumi, so it doesn't count because you haven't done the shita yet or the malika. Vibasar the nafakadam, and if it's after the blood came out, isavida le mitzvasa. So it's already like it's done, right? Once the blood comes out, and it seems to be saying if it's at the mizbech, it's like the zrika has already been done, which is a little strange, but that's the only way I can understand this. Then the avoda is done, and any improper intent is not a problem because it's done already. So my kusha. So the Gemara says, well, what's the question? Dilma midaparish v'yad dematal mizbeach. So yeah, maybe your assumption's wrong. Maybe it's like once the blood comes out of the bird, it's not the avodah isn't done until it actually gets to the mizbeach, right? So then okay, so then now our question makes sense. Um, and let's just support that. Dahad ba mine Rabbi Yirmiyah or Rabbi Yirmiyah asked, Hayamaza, if you're sprinkling the blood on the mizbeach, v'nikta ayado shel maza, and then your hand got cut off. Ashlag yidam alav your mizbeach, like you're sprinkling, and then before the blood, while it's still flying through the air, your hand gets cut off. Okay, so you don't have a hand anymore. Mao. So like the by the time the blood gets to the mizbeach, there's the Kohen has no hand to have sprinkled it with. So v'amarle psula. And Sarah says, "Yeah, you're right. It's no good." My tama, why? V'hiza v'nasan binan, because the Torah says you sprinkle it and then you apply it to the mizbeach. Um, so it links the sprinkling, which is when it leaves your hand, to the nesina, which is when it actually gets to the mizbeach. It has to be in the same condition. The coin has to be in the same condition for both the beginning and the end of the sprinkling. Um, so, um, okay, so yeah, so this shows that the avoda is not complete until the blood actually gets to the mizbeach. So there's no problem. He also Rav Papa Rav Huna Rav Shua Mibei Rav, when Rav Papa and Rav Shua came from Rav's yeshiva, Amrei Hainuchucha. This is why they laughed. Um, well, this is why they laughed. Uvahalacha Rabasi lo pligate. What? So now you want to think that Rav Shimon doesn't argue about a significant distance um, of walking. Vaki plige balacha Rabasi plige. That's what they're talking about. It's like a significant distance. Ella zutrasi kuliyama lo plige lo pasla. This is how you understand it. A short distance that you could just reach with your arm. Everybody agrees that's not a problem, right? If you didn't take that last step, but you just stretched out your arm, that's fine. All right, kipliga malacharabasi. It only makes sense to understand that Rabbi Shimon is arguing about when you have to take several steps, and you didn't. You did it with a non-walking halacha. That's why. Like it's obvious to in Marava, but Marava in the West, they said, look, it's obvious that what Rabbi Shimon is talking about is a significant distance that you conveyed it without walking. So don't try to explain it. Don't try to say that it applies to when you're already right next to the mizbeach. Holichos if a zar, a non-Kohen, brought the blood to the mizbeach, v'chziro Kohen v'chazer v'holicho, and then the Kohen says, "Oh, wait a minute, that was a mistake." Takes the blood back to where the zar started from, and he takes it again. Pligi ba b'nei Rabbi Chia Rabbi Yanai. So we have machlokas. Chanan Rakasher, Chanan Rapasul. One says it's fine. Like he redid it, so it's okay. And the other says no. Once the czar has done part of it, it's possible. Marsavar al takuna. So in other words, everybody says if the czar took it, that's a problem. But the question is, can you fix it? Marsavar al takuna. One says you can fix it by the Kohen taking it back to the point where the czar picked it up and then redoing that walk. Marsavar al takuna. And the other says no. It's possible. You can't fix it. Now,
Didn't
holicha.
we discuss this before?
Yeah.
Isn't that,
Yes. Essentially, yes. Yeah, we're just
what's
uh
new here? What's the
there's nothing new
news
here
here?
yet. Now, but here, check this out. Holicha coin vech zero. V'chazar v'holicha zar. Now, what if the coin took it from A to B, right? And then it went back. How it got back is not important. Okay, but it went back to A, and now a czar brings it from A to B. Okay, so originally the coin brought it, it was fine, right? And now a czar brings it that same distance. So what about that? Does that invalidate it? Amr of Shimi Barashi, Ledivri Apostel Machshir. Uh, Whoever said before that it's possible, in this case, you would say it's kosher because it was originally brought by the proper coin. Rava Amar Afladivri Apostel Pasul. No, Rava says no. In any case, it's possible, even though it was originally brought by the coin. It's now invalidated because it's brought by a czar. My tama, daha, sorry, tuye, because like if it was taken away, it was taken back to point A, it still has to go back to the Mizbeach. So, it's a long and winding road for this blood to get to the Mizbeach, but any progress made towards the Mizbeach done by a Zar is no good. Okay. Amalei Rav Yirmiyah Rashi, Rav Yirmiyah said, Hachi Amar Rav Yirmiyah Midiftei, Rav Yirmiyah of Diftei said the following, Chasoich Lam Tuya Mechlokos Rabbi Elazar Rabbana. This argument, this idea that like you still have to consider that it still has to go from A to B the second time, that's actually a machlokas. This non Rabbi Elazar Amar, Mishnah says, according to Rabbi Eliezer, Hamahalech b'makom shesorich lahalech, machshava poselas. If you're walking with the blood in on the path to the Mizbeach, in a place where you should walk, in other words, towards the Mizbeach, Machshava Posalis. Then, if while you're doing that, you're thinking, I'm going to consume this carbon outside of its proper place or time, that makes it possible. V'yamar Rava, and Rava said, Hakol modim kiblo b'chutz, v'ichnisa b'fnim, zo hiluch shesoich lahalech. So what does it mean? Like, distance that you have to cover, right? That if the Kabbalah Saddam, if taking the blood from the animal and bringing it closer to the Mizbeach, obviously that is a significant walk, right? That's a walk that has to be done. Now, Kibla Bifnim Vosila Chutz, what we're talking about is if the blood was taken from the animal closer to the mizbeach, and you took a winding road. You kind of you went backwards first. That's the question. That is an unnecessary halacha, and that is what Rabbi Eliezer says that's not a problem if you have a machshava psula at that time. The only machlokas is whether where you're bringing the blood towards the mizbeach and then you go back. Mar savar hasorich lam tuyeh. One says, well, now you have to go back. Um, so the halacha, this is part of the halacha. Like since you still have to return it towards the mizbeach, this is all part of the halacha. No, this is like a detour, right? It's like these people that do these long hikes, like the Pacific Crest Trail. And the way they do it is, they go from A to B, they walk, and then they need to go resupply themselves or something. So they leave the trail, they go to the nearest town, they buy their supplies, they take a shower, and then they go back to where they were. So that side trip, that spur, doesn't count, right? That's not part of the walking the Pacific Crest Trail. Similarly, that's not part of the avodah. So if you have a machshava psula on that, this one view would be that the machshava psula is not a problem if it's on this side trip. So Abaye asked, Rabbi Eliezer, Omer Hamalach, Makom Shetzarech Lahalech, Machshava Poselas, Ketzad. Another Mishnah explains Rabbi Eliezer's view. Zeu Hiluch Shetzarech Lahalech. This is what it means, a holacha that has to be done. Kiblo b'fnim v'asiyah lachutz. You took the blood close to the mizbeach and you walked away from the mizbeach. That is walking halacha that's not necessary. So you have machshava psula, that's okay. Now, so that implies that if he brought it back towards the mizbeach, then that part it has to be done, right? So, like Rabbi Eliezer is saying specifically, you know what I mean by halacha that's not necessary? Walking backwards, okay, away from the mizbeach. But that implies that when you then finally return towards the mizbeach, that is necessary. Amalei, Itanya, Tanya. Okay, that's the brisa. Then I agree with you. Now, Zevachim, that's the end of the first parak of Zevachim.
Well, we said earlier, according to Rabbi Yochanan, right, that walking backwards is a form of tikkun. It's a form of tikkun, right? So there wouldn't be.
Rabbi Yochanan, no, Rabbi Yochanan. Remember, Rabbi Yochanan, we weren't sure if there could be a tikkun or not. We couldn't
Well, that
conclude
we
what
thought
Rabbi
that
Yochanan
might.
thought.
Yeah, but that was a way that he was proposing a tikkun, right?
Yes, right.
So if
So yeah, so
so
we
therefore
end up
walking
with
backwards shouldn't be a problem.
no, we end up with that the walking backwards. Excuse me. The walking backwards itself is not a problem. It's then when you return it that has to be done in a valid way.
Uh,
Okay,
okay. So, okay. All right. I see what you mean. You
second
have a
paragraph.
puzzle. You can't have a machshava psula.
Right, right. Right. So that only applies. Rabbi Eliezer is saying, you know, when it's possible when you're walking back towards the mizbech, but if you're walking away from the mizbech and you have the machshava posalas at that time, that's okay. That's not a problem because you're walking the wrong way. Kol Zevachim shekilu daman zar. Any korban that a zar, a non-Kohen, catches the blood in the klisharis, or onan, or if the person was a Kohen but he was an onen, which is the a someone whose relative has just died and hasn't been buried yet, or tful or he was tameh um, and he has gone to the mikvah, but he has to wait till nightfall, so he's still invalid for korbanos. Umachusar kipurim, or he hasn't brought his korban yet. Umachusar bagadim, or he's a valid kohen, but he's not wearing the correct bigdei kahuna. Or shelo rachas yadayim v'raglayim, or he's a valid kohen, but he didn't do the hands and feet washing, which you're supposed to do before the avoda. Or you're not circumcised. Tameh, or you're tameh. Yoshev, or you're sitting. You have to be standing. Omer al gabi kalim, or you're not standing on the floor, you're standing on some other thing that's on the floor. You're not contacting the floor of the mikdash directly. Or al gabi behemar, you're standing on an animal, al gabi chavero, you're standing on somebody else's feet. Either way, you're not contacting the floor, you're not standing on the floor. Possible, all these cases, um, the Kabbalah Saddam is invalid. Kibel was small. What about if you use your left hand and you're supposed to be using your right hand? Possible. Then it's also possible. But Rabbi Shimon Machshir, in this case, Rabbi Shimon says it's okay. It doesn't make the carbon possible if you do it with your left hand.
So
So,
suppose he doesn't have a right hand, or suppose his right hand is
no, then he's a
injured.
Balmum.
What?
Yeah, then he's a Balmum. Then that's covered under Balmum. Yeah, that's not, then that's a possible avoda for sure.
Uh-huh.
Now, so you want us to know Zor Minala. What's the source that a Zar can't do the this avoda? Or not that he can't do it, but that makes it possible. The Tane Levi taught, Dabar Aaron Yalbanav Lemor Nazru Mikadshe B'nai Yisrael. Tell Aaron and his sons they should separate themselves from the Kadshim, V'lo Yichalu Hashem Kadshi, and don't do it wrong. B'nai Yisrael and Mutemai. Why does it say they should separate themselves from Bnei Israel? If you want to say that this comes to exclude women. Um, so um, so sacrifices of women don't need kohanim. No, well, we're going to reject this obviously. So karban nashim betuma karev. Like, can you really you think you can do karbanos of women in an improper way? Like in tuma, don't even think that, right? So maybe coming to exclude non-Jews, right, or idol worshippers. Hashta, well, that's too obvious. Tzitz lo maratza. The tzitz does not give kapara to the to um, uh, not doesn't give kapara, but doesn't make acceptable the blood of a carbon of an oved of Odasara. How do I know? If it's an oved kochavim bringing a sacrifice, then then that is not, it's not considered a good sacrifice.
Now
Um,
we're talking about above in women. Is it women in the state of Tuma or women in general? I mean, women can bring a
women
korban,
in
right?
general, but we're saying like this pasuk, the pasuk is telling us,
The mutin, that's his
the
korban
pasuk is
that's in
telling
the
us
Tuma.
don't do sacrifices when you're tamei. But it says specifically the sacrifices of Bnei Israel. Okay, so does that mean not Benos Yisrael? No, we rejected that. It means any Jew. Does it mean not Ovdei Kochavim? In other words, an Ovdei Kochavim sacrifice, you could do Betuma, but the Gemara says, well, don't be ridiculous. Like that's completely beyond the pale in the first place. So you can't bring the blood of a sacrifice brought by and Ovid Kochavim, so Betuma Karev. So you can't even do it when you're Tahar. So don't tell me that the pasuk is saying, oh, but if you're Tameh, you can bring the sacrifice of an Ovid Kochavim. That makes no sense, right? So when does it exclude? Why does it say Bnei Yisrael? Elahachikam. This is what it means. V'nazru mikadshei. So we're gonna parse the pasuk differently. Separate yourself from kachim, right? And then in other words, like do kachim b'tara, and then b'nei Yisrael v'lo yichalalu. But you know who can't do that? B'nei Yisrael, like the non-kohanim, the rest of the population, they can't do the sacrifices. Okay, so we're kind of splitting and reinterpreting the pasuk, and that's the proof that a zar um, um, can't do the avoda, right?
I'm
B'nai
not still
Yisrael
feel
v'lo
confused
yichalalu.
by this by the phrase, but he uses it. The Gemara uses this both by nashim and by zarim, by goyim. It says betuma karev. What does it have to mention it? Aren't we discussing the idea of the nashim and the non-Jews? What's the idea of betuma karev?
No, that's a question. Rather, as a question.
I
B'tuma
understand
karev.
that.
You think that can be brought b'tuma? Certainly not. I mean, it's ridiculous. In other words, like don't. It's the idea that Bnei Israel means that whose carbon can you not do betuma? When is tuma a problem? Okay, so the original thing is, oh, only men's carbonos that tuma is a problem. For women, it's not a problem. That's
Oh,
ridiculous, right?
oh.
And then we want to say, oh,
Okay.
only Jews sacrifices is a problem if it's brought betuma, but for non-Jews, it's fine betuma. It's also
Uh-huh.
ridiculous.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Okay. So that's how we end up with understanding this pasuk to say, B'nai Yisrael v'lo yichalalu. Like if it's brought by a zar, that's when it is invalid. Very Shaltana, another approach to how do you know the tuma that the avoda of a zar is invalid. Asya b'kal v'chomer mibalmum. It's a kal v'chomer from a balmum, someone who has a physical deformity can't do the avoda. Ma balmum she'ochel, a balmum, he can't do the avoda, but he's allowed, if he's a kohen, he can eat kachim, right? Im avad chilel, but if he does the avoda, it's no good. Zar she'eno ochel, a zar who can't even eat the kachim, enodin shim avad chilel. So certainly his avoda is no good. And okay, here we're going to get into a bit of a long logical thing. So maybe we'll pick this up tomorrow. We'll start. We'll pick this up tomorrow from the bottom of Amud Aleph. Okay. Have a good day, everybody. See you
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay.